Hey, everybody. This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good looking friends. I wasn't going to do a video today. However, this article came up from the New York Post and it sent me off the rails. I decided to record this because I wanted to express my thoughts around how ridiculous and annoying this is getting with all this gaslighting that Scobie or Scrappy do to promote this new version of history that Meghan is trying to force down our throats. Let's talk about how they are continuing to gaslight the public and use race in order to cause division and hatred towards the royal family. Don't they see that the public is onto them and what they're trying to do? I think the people that should be called out for being racist should be Scobie, Meghan Markle, Prince Harry, and the whole Black Lives Matter movement, because all they do is talk about race and skin color. Look, I get that part of this is for the sensationalism in trying to get this book to sell, banking that race is going to drive this book to be flying off the shelves as a bestseller. But let me tell you something. People are tired of this same rhetoric around skin color and using it as the reason why you're such a victim. Honestly, like the reason why Meghan didn't succeed in the monarchy and didn't succeed fitting in is because she didn't want to. And it had nothing to do with her being part black, but let's remember that she's also white. So what's the excuse, Omid? The whole Black Lives Matter movement turned out to be one big scam. And who were the scammers? The black people. They're the ones that stole the money. That's not racist, that's a fact. And I'm sorry if anybody feels offended, but when accountability needs to be held, I don't care what color you are, I'm going to call it out. I am a woman of color myself, and I'm not offended, so you don't need to be either. Next up, you have Meghan, who lied in talking about the LA riots and her experience to a whole class, asking them to rise on up after graduation. The monarchy is not into this woke shit. And quite frankly, even if they did step up, let's say they did acknowledge it, you know that it wouldn't be good enough because nothing is ever good enough for Meghan and Harry. And this article piggybacks off of this article that was released in the Sun UK. So now we've got both sides of the Atlantic being covered, talking about how racist the royal family is. Once again, Meghan Markle has ripped the scab off of her grievances back in 2021 over this lie that she told on television to try and gain sympathy. Look, we know that Meghan and Harry very much have their hands in this book. Whether Omid wants to admit it or not, we can't really trust that because he's lied before. And we know that this couple, who vehemently denied that they had anything to do with finding freedom, most definitely had their hands in that book. So don't think that Meghan's hands are not in this one. Her fingerprints are all over it, as well as Harry's. Let me refresh people's memories around the origins of this book, because I think with all this noise that's flying around, we tend to forget why this book was created in the first place. In a preview that was given for the book, the epilogue was available to read online, and in it, Scobie writes, I started this book in the summer of 2022, so the Queen's passing happened well into the writing process. This meant going back and figuring out how to reframe key chapters while looking through the twin prisms of the late monarch's death and the ascension of her eldest son. Okay, we're going to stop right there. Scobie announced he was writing this book after the Harkles had been humiliated on a global stage at the Jubilee, and then Tom Bauer releasing his book the following month and exposing all her lies and dirty manipulations. So naturally, Meghan had her cheerleader and mouthpiece announce that he's writing this book, and we all knew that it was in response or going to be used as a response and clapback to all of this. So, what we are seeing now, everything that has been postured, the letter changing the narrative around her, thinking it was unconscious bias and the family was not racist. All of this was a result of being exposed in 2022 for the liar that she is. Doing the Oprah interview was the worst thing that they could have done. They should have came over to America, kept their mouth shut, put their head down, did some work, and then start blasting the media, but because they went on Oprah, aired their grievances, lied about it, that shot them in the foot from the get-go. So 2023 was about, well, it was supposed to be about reconciliation. And we saw in the beginning of the year the couple trying to distance themselves from that interview, even though they never apologized. They never said, well, we didn't mean it that way, but instead now spun the narrative that it was unconscious bias. But I'm sorry, the damage was done. And I think right now, this retelling of the story by Omid Scobie, there was a reason why Megan positioned this Telegraph, I guess, leak to Victoria Ward back in April to now be brought up and used for this book. I don't believe for one second that Megan didn't speak to Omid. I believe that Omid had a connection to Megan and Megan was feeding information. And there's evidence, even in the prologue. Scrappy Doo talks about how he found out about the Queen's death. He writes, arriving at ABC News office that Thursday afternoon, I received a text from someone very close to the family. As I caught my breath in the elevator of the Disney owned building, a spoonful of sugar was playing quietly in the background, making a surreal moment even more so. It's funny that he mentions sugar because he is the captain of the Sugars. Please don't say anything yet, but I think it's happened, they wrote. I responded with a follow up checking that I understood their message correctly. No doubt trying to get confirmation of their own, the source, someone whose word I had come to trust over recent years, didn't reply. Well, folks, we could only imagine who that person may be. As we recall, Lady C had mentioned the reason why she had released the information about the Queen was because word was traveling, because somebody, I think, on the West Coast found out about it. And my guess is that Scobie had some type of involvement here. And this is where I believe Megan was directly involved in communicating with him about this. We know that Omid Scobie was in contact with the Harkles when the Queen passed away, so it's not that far of a stretch to think that it was Megan who did leak that information to Scobie. And of course, he said it's someone very close to the family, so who else would that be? Very good chance that it was this psychopath. In fact, Scobie gives himself away right from Jump Street. In this prologue, he writes, the arrival of Meghan in 2016 saw my two news beats, entertainment and the royals, collide. And less than a year later, I made the decision to focus on the royal family full time. Owing to a unique pool of sources and a refusal to follow the crowd, I quickly became a trusted confidant for many in and around the younger family, a true insider. So let's take a look at some of these bombshell claims that are supposedly coming out in Scobie's book. Number one, Charles told royals not to trust Harry. I mean, come on now. Is anybody surprised by that? Number two, Princess Anne back to Frogmore eviction, allegedly. Like, do they really want to start picking a fight with Princess Anne now? Let's not forget that she is the one that's holding Harry's money until he's 40. So maybe that's not the best route to gain sympathy. Number three, Meghan says there are now two royal races. I'm going to come back to this in a second. Let me finish this list. Number four, Harry prepared to forget row with family. Oh, no, he's not. The quoted statement that was leaked from the book and allegedly Prince Harry saying, I'm ready to forget, get an apology or explanation? At this point, who cares, right? I don't know about you folks, but that sounds a lot like Meghanese to me. Who do we know that says right after everything? Megan. How many times does she say that after like a sentence, right? Right? It's like one of the most annoying things, right? Number five, Kate and Megan haven't spoken in 4 years. Do you blame her? Who is the one that went on television and lied to specifically paint the narrative to make Catherine look bad? Who made who cry? Yeah, that's what I thought. Number six, news of Queen's death kept from Harry. Well, We already debunked that one. We know that that was a flat out lie. And finally, number 7, William on Harry being brainwashed by therapists. Now, I do believe that this came from Harry's own mouth during his Spare tour when he was doing the night shows. I think on Stephen Colbert is where he started talking about his family thinking that he was brainwashed in this psychobabble.
In one of today's newspapers, apparently I'm trapped in the cult of psychotherapy. Again, one of the reasons why I wrote this book is every word in that book is mine.
Well, if this is the case, then this claim that Omid puts in his book about Prince William thinking Harry had been brainwashed came directly from Harry, because he says it in his book Spare, right here. Meghan was not the only one who was the source. Harry, too, was a part of this. Make no mistake about that. Remember back in May when Scobie had stated when he testified for Prince Harry that he didn't have the Duke's phone number and he had never socialized with him? Well, I'm going to call bullshit on that. Well, not only does he expose himself in Finding Freedom by admitting that he had interaction with the Harkles, you see, Scobie's not lying when he said that he had been reporting on the royal since 2011. I'm guessing he was trying to stalk William and Catherine to become their mouthpiece, but instead he ended up tracking and, I want to say, aligning more with Prince Harry. Scobie had been following Prince Harry on tours back since 2014, before even Meghan came into the picture. As you can see here, they're tweets from Harry's Brazil and Latin America trip, in which he does detail what Harry was doing in the very same moment. So it does look like he was hanging out with Prince Harry. I wonder why he closed down this Twitter account and opened up his current one. Could it be that he doesn't want people to know that he was involved in these trips? I don't know. This kind of looks like they were partying together. Could Meghan have been following Omid because he was writing stories for Us Weekly? Possibly. We know Meghan is addicted to these tabloid magazines and wanted so desperately to be in them. So, rightfully so, if she was stalking Catherine and William, which most likely she was reading up on everything they were doing, because we all were at that time, you can bet that she probably looked at the royal reporters and through that started to make her connections. Because Omid Scobie was with Prince Harry for years before Meghan came onto the scene. And I think a lot of us don't realize that it might have been Harry who introduced Omid to Meghan. Now, I'm just speculating. Omid Scobie didn't pop up when Meghan Markle came on the scene. He was in the circle. So, him actually saying that he had been a royal reporter is true. Now, I don't know about the relationship with Marcus. That's something I have no evidence of, but I am aware of that rumor. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, they were all hanging out at the Soho House anyway, so who's to say that they didn't meet at some point? It's all possible. But in any case, I want to get back to bullet number 3 of Meghan now naming 2 royal races, because I think it's important that we remember what exactly happened with this letter. Now, from the preliminary evidence, I know that the book is not out yet, and what has been quoted by the newspapers could be taken out of context, but the reporting of this royal race row and Meghan naming 2 royal races, to me sounds quite suspect. Remember, Meghan and Harry's popularity tanked in 2022 after the Jubilee and Tom Bower's book, and Omid Scobie started writing this in the summer of 2022. So, is it possible there was collusion in crafting up a new narrative? I think so. Who could forget that before the coronation, Meghan leaks a letter to, or leaks information to Victoria Ward at the Telegraph? Who could forget this bombshell that was dropped earlier in the year to grab the attention away from the king before his coronation? Who could forget this wonderful tweet by Valentine Lowe saying, "Fascinating story by Victoria Ward." The question is, why does the Sussex camp want to leak all this? Is it Meghan trying to prevent an outbreak of peace between Harry and his father? and intriguing that they should resort to the sort of briefing that they condemned in others. And intriguing that they should resort to the sort of briefing that they condemned in others. Now, these concerns, they related to the allegations of racism made on the Oprah interview and linking to what she claimed were concerns about Archie's skin color, the security title, and yada yada. We know the drill. Then Victoria Ward then reports that it was the King and the Prince of Wales who wrote to Meghan first after the Oprah interview. So we're not talking about that right now, but I think it's important that we remember that it was the King and Prince William who both reached out to Meghan after all of this blew up. I believe that there are letters out there, and I believe that the King as well as Prince William both reached out. And let's just take off our family hat for a moment and put on the business hat. The monarchy is a business, and at all costs, any business has to protect the brand. So, in my opinion, I think that the initial communication by the palace from the king and also Prince William was pretty much a cover your ass type situation. So then Victoria Ward reports that the king wrote to Meghan after the Oprah interview saying he is said to be disappointed that the Duke and Duchess felt the need to make such high profile and damaging allegations. So understand, this sounds very legal if this was the case. Now, Meghan must have read it and been like, this is so cold. They didn't comfort me or make me feel like I was wanted. No, Meghan, this was to protect the business. Now, if we are to believe this author of this Telegraph article, Meghan's response did acknowledge and agree to the racism charge, but indicated that it was not intended to be that way, right? So the Duchess acknowledged that the individual's remarks was not made with malice. So, yeah, no, I didn't mean it that way. But, when you think about it this way, why didn't Meghan speak up sooner? Why did she wait 2 years then to expose that she wrote this letter saying, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it to come off that way"? And in this report by Victoria Ward, she states that Meghan was also still upset about the way the bullying investigation against her was handled, and that her complaints about it have also not been resolved. Now, again, I reiterate, allegedly, this was one of the reasons why Meghan didn't go to the coronation, because of these unresolved issues that she had in this letter that never got taken care of, allegedly, by the king. So here's the $64,000 question that I have. If this letter was allegedly written in 2021, as they say, after the Oprah interview, and Meghan wasn't pleased with the responses and the king failing to address some of the things that she had put in there, such as the bullying allegations and her wanting to take her life and blah, blah, blah. Help me understand that if this was a reason or part of the reason for why she didn't go to the coronation because she didn't feel comfortable due to the unsatisfactory responses of their unconscious bias and what other else bullshit that she is complaining about, then why did she go to the Jubilee? I mean, if the issues weren't resolved in 2023, then they definitely weren't resolved in 2022. You see what I'm saying? But in any case, this created a tremendous amount of backlash against the Sussexes, to which Scobie then sends out a tweet with the Duchess of Sussex's statement about how she's going about her life and not thinking about these conversations in order to do some type of damage control as a result of leaking the story. The Sussex PR machine panicked because the palace then had their lawyers approach the Telegraph because of the leaking of this information. So this is also another reason why I believe this letter exists, is because the palace would not have gone and used their lawyers to make the Telegraph change the article. Do you all remember how many times this article had been updated for legal purposes? It was a total of about 11 reiterations for this one damn article. This attempt really backfired on him. I don't know if this was a similar strategy that they used from the Oprah interview. Remember, when the Queen was alive, Harry and Meghan made sure that whoever made the so-called racist comment was not Queen Elizabeth or Prince Philip. Could it be possible that these two were trying to win the favor with the king? Because he essentially now holds all this power. As before, the queen had the power, and you could see that Meghan and Harry, most likely Scobie too, in writing this book, probably were dumping on Queen Camilla and King Charles. So after the queen died, I'm guessing they didn't expect her to die so quickly. And they had to change all sorts of things, things in the Netflix mockumentary. Meghan had to redo her archetypes and edit some things out. But I do believe that they were attacking the family and they had to change that because they would have shot themselves in their foot. I mean, they already did from the very beginning with this Oprah interview, but I think it would have been a lot worse. I think Harry and Meghan would have attacked the king and queen had they not become king and queen. They would have left the queen alone. I don't think Meghan fully understood how respected and loved the queen was because when she filmed that Netflix and did that insulting curtsy, she thought she was being funny. She thought she was like hamming it up for the cameras, not thinking that she was insulting a whole nation. And I do believe that she understood it, or at least saw the gravity of what it meant to the UK to lose this wonderful woman. But I don't think that Meghan had the self awareness to understand that, this part in the Netflix mockumentary should have been cut out. And she could have made that call, but didn't. And that's because she's a self absorbed, classless asshole. There's no other way to describe it. It's not a coincidence that Scobie had been hanging out in Southern California over the last several months. We can take a guess as to who he was with and what he was doing. It will be interesting to see next week what other revelations will come out for which we will have to debunk and discuss and call out, just like what we're doing here, even in the preliminary buildup to this book being dropped. But what do you guys think? I thought I'd bring this forward. Like, I truly am tired of using this race card because America is over it. So if they think that this is going to sell books, it may sell books among a certain demographic and a certain race, but it's not going to reach the masses because, quite frankly, we have other shit to think about that's going on right now in this country to be worried about diversity and inclusion at the palace. Like here in America, we don't care. And quite frankly, so many of us are sick and tired of these race baiters trying to gaslight everyone in order to push this woke ideology. You see, society is destructing as a result of these stupid idiots like Meghan and Harry who preach and virtue signal, but are complete hypocrites at the end of the day. Look, I don't have any shame to say that I'm looking forward to this book coming out next week because one, I need a good laugh, and two, I can't wait to rip it apart and call out all the bullshit and lies because already what we're seeing here are holes in their story. And nothing gives me more pleasure than holding their own words and feet to the fire and putting this out on blast. So I'm looking forward to it. But what do you guys think? Definitely leave your thoughts below. As always, I will be back with more content, but until then, please be safe and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
It was such a fraud.